Hi guys, welcome to Presume Legal. I'm Misha Janice. I'm an entrepreneur and attorney licensed in New York and Florida. So recently, I was trying to schedule my son's first dental visit. He's just a toddler, and we started a while ago teaching him healthy dental habits, but I just never got around to getting him into a dentist chair before. One of my reasons was if it was going to be anything like his early years at the doctor's appointments, I just wasn't ready for that level of stress and anxiety and sweating out my shirt and his fear of being checked out by medical professionals. I'm telling you, this kid wouldn't even want to sit on the scale to get weighed at the doctor's appointments. Anyways, I figure since he's getting better going to the doctor these last few times, and he's heard some of his little friends talking about their first dentist visits, he's really excited about, teeth brushing and getting new toothbrushes and tasting the different flavors of toothpaste. Now is the time to get that sorted. As I was calling around trying to find a dental practice that took our insurance, was accepting new patients, wasn't too far away, I started thinking about Charlie Adelson and his dental practice. So in the last video, I detailed the Adelson Institute and some of the shady business practices that were going on there. How it was likely that they had committed tax fraud and tax evasion, in my opinion, in part due to the hiring of Katie McBanoa, a ghost employee. Anyway, I started thinking about what was the status of Charlie's dental license in the state of Florida? Is he being a helpful cellie in prison, helping out, pulling teeth, looking for signs of decay on his fellow prison mates? Is he looking in people's mouths when they complain of pain, maybe double checking the work of the actual approved dentists who work in the prison system? Could he even do any of that if he wanted to? Could he volunteer? This got me researching to find out whether he was still licensed at all and what happens to the professional license of a convicted murderer. I wanted to show you guys what I found. So let's get into it.
Okay, so here we are over at the Florida Department of Health's website where we can go to look up the license status of Florida health professionals. Here we go. So let me just pop in his name. Let's do it under Charles. There we go. So we see here that it immediately came up, Charles J. Adelson, with his license number as of the date of this recording, February 26, 2024. The license status is emergency suspended. Okay. Well, that's interesting. His license expiration date is the end of this month, in just a couple days from now. The address of record that he had on was the Will Harbor property. And we are just going to go down and look at discipline on file. Let's find out more about this order of emergency suspension of license that was filed on November 9th, 2023. Oh, wow. Okay, so the emergency action, I can see what, 3 different cases. Let's just go through these and see what was going on with Mr. Charlie. We'll go to the emergency actions first. All right, here we have a 5-page document. In re the emergency suspension of the license of Charlie Adelson. So this is the order of emergency suspension of license. Joseph Latipo, the state surgeon general, orders the emergency suspension of Charlie to practice as a dentist in the state of Florida. He holds a license, his address, and it states Dr. Adelson is currently incarcerated in Leon County Detention Center in Tallahassee. The following findings of fact and conclusions of law support the emergency suspension of Dr. Adelson's license to practice as a dentist in the state of Florida. Now, this document looks like it was filed November 9th, 2023. Findings of fact. 1. The Department of Health, the department, is a state agency charged with regulating the practice of dentistry pursuant to a few chapters of the Florida statutes. Florida statutes authorizes the department to summarily suspend Dr. Adelson's license to practice as a dentist in the state of Florida. At all times material to this order, Dr. Adelson was licensed to practice as a dentist pursuant to Chapter 466. On or about November 6, 2023, in the Second Judicial Circuit in and for Leon County, Florida, in case number that, Dr. Adelson was found guilty by a jury of his peers to 1 count of first-degree murder, 1 count of solicitation to commit murder, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder. All felonies in violation of this Florida statute. Section 456.074, paren 1D provides that the department shall issue an emergency suspension order suspending the license of any person licensed under Chapter 466 who pleads guilty to, is convicted or found guilty of, or enters a plea of nolo contendere to, regardless of adjudication, a felony under Chapter 782 relating to homicide. So this is a mandatory issuance that the department shall. There is no permissiveness or discretion allowed by the Florida statutes. Once somebody is convicted of a felony relating to homicide. Conclusions of law. Based on the foregoing findings of fact, the department concludes as follows. The department has jurisdiction over this matter. On or about November 6, 2023, Dr. Adelson was found guilty of 1 count of murder, 1 count solicitation to commit murder, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder, felonies in violation of the Florida statutes. The department is mandated to summarily suspend Dr. Adelson's license to practice as a dentist in accordance with the Florida statute. So it is ordered that the license of Charles J. Adelson, DMD, license number, that is immediately suspended. A proceeding seeking formal discipline of the license to practice as a dentist in the state of Florida will be promptly instituted and acted upon in compliance with the section 120.569 of the Florida statutes. So that is the order issuing an emergency suspension of Charlie's dental license. Let's go back and see what else there was. Let's see. Let's go down to this discipline case. Ooh, this is 20 pages. Okay, so it looks like this was a case from 2013. This document was filed in 2019, and it was in an action by the Department of Health against Charlie. And what we see here is a final order counter settlement agreement. So let's see if we can figure out what was going on here. This matter appeared before the Board of Dentistry at a duly noticed public meeting on February 15, 2019 in Gainesville, Florida, for consideration of a settlement agreement. Upon consideration of the settlement agreement, the documents submitted in support thereof, the arguments of the parties, and otherwise being advised in the premises, the board rejected the settlement agreement and offered a counter settlement agreement that includes all terms of the original settlement agreement with the following modifications. 1, the respondent, who was Charlie, shall pay an administrative fine in the amount of $5,000 in lieu of $2,000. Okay, so they just wanted him to pay some more fine money. The fine shall be paid in full within 6 months from the effective date of the final order, And 2, the respondent's license shall be reprimanded in lieu of being issued a letter of concern. So, I can surmise that a reprimand is a more severe punishment than a letter of concern. As imposed by the written settlement agreement, the respondent, that's Charlie, shall pay costs of prosecution. The total costs are $7,000. The respondent timely accepted the counter settlement agreement on the record at the board meeting. So Charlie agreed to those terms. It was ordered that the counter settlement agreement was approved and adopted. So that is that. Let's see if we can get some background information on what was happening. All right, here's some stipulated facts. And these stipulated facts were from the settlement agreement. This is probably the settlement agreement proposed by Charlie, because then the board came back with a counter settlement agreement, which was what was actually approved and ordered. So, stipulated facts. For all times pertinent herein, respondent, Charlie, was a licensed dentist in the state of Florida. Respondent was charged by an administrative complaint with violating Chapter 466. The complaint was filed by the Department of Health and served upon Charlie. Charlie neither admits nor denies the factual allegations in the complaint and is entering into the settlement agreement for the purpose of settlement in these administrative proceedings only. Okay, let's see. This looks like it could be some actual substantive facts about what the underlying complaint was based on. This is the amended administrative complaint. Let's get to the meat of this. All right. On August 20th, 2011, patient MF appointed with respondent for extraction of tooth 21 and placement of implants at teeth 17, 18, 21, 29, 30, and 31. Bone grafting was also placed at 21. Florida Administrative Code requires dentists to maintain written records for each patient. That rule requires each dentist to maintain written records on each patient, which shall contain, at a minimum, medical history, results of clinical exams and tests conducted, any radiographs used for the diagnosis or treatment of the patient, treatment plan proposed by the dentist, and treatment rendered to the patient. Respondent, that's Charlie, failed to document in the patient records the type of bone graft, manufacturer, and lot number placed in the patient on August 20th, 2011. This information is vital to patient safety in the event of a product recall. After the surgery, respondent, that's Charlie, provided the patient with a cell phone number. Patient made contact with respondent soon after the surgery with complaints of numbness. Charlie evaluated the patient on August 22nd, 2011. This was 2 days after the bone graft was conducted, at which time she again complained of numbness and tingling in the lower left lip area. Charlie noted the extent of the nerve injury but did not provide any treatment. On September 1, 2011, the patient called Charlie complaining of pain in the lower right side and numbness in the lower left. On or about September 8th, 2011, respondent examined patient for continued complaints of numbness in her lower left quadrant. Charlie removed the implant at 17 and provided the patient with 1 Medrol dose pack. Respondent placed a new implant in area for tooth 20 on this date. A known risk of implant placement is injury to the inferior, alveolar nerve. The minimum standards of performance in diagnosis and treatment in the practice of dentistry require that a dentist must not place any additional implants in or around a suspected area of nerve injury without allowing the patient adequate healing time for the sensory deficiency to resolve. Respondent failed to allow the patient adequate healing time before placing more dental implants into or around the injured area. On September 22nd, 2011, patient returned to Charlie complaining that she was still numb in the lower left area. Respondent took an updated Panorax CT scan and removed implant 18, which was, quote, very close to the nerve. Patient appointed with respondent on October 6, 2011 for nerve mapping. Respondent, that's Charlie, removed the implant for tooth 21 during this visit. On October 21st, 2011, respondent removed implant 20 after patient still reported numbness in the lower left area. Patient was referred to an oral surgeon, Dr. SS. Dr. SS examined patient on or about November 22nd, 2011. At this appointment, Dr. SS determined that the implants placed by Charlie were in close proximity to the left mental inferior alveolar nerve, but there was no indication of physical contact. Dr. SS referred patient to a specialist, Dr. RM, in Georgia. Patient was seen by Dr. RM on January 10th, 2012. Dr. RM opined that patient had an injury of the left inferior alveolar / mental nerve and recommended that the nerve be explored and repaired. The surgery was performed at Northside Hospital on January 12, 2012. The surgery revealed that the right mandibular implants were surrounded by granulation tissue and an exudate. All three implants were removed. The inferior alveolar nerve was narrowed and replaced with scar tissue in the 19 and 21 areas. An indemnity in the amount of $187,000 was paid to patient based on the allegations of malpractice as outlined above. Wow. So it seems as if this patient originally went to go see Charlie. Let's see. On August 20th, 2011, had problems with the services and products that Charlie used in the patient's mouth, complained about it over and over from August, close to the end of August through September and October until November when they saw a different doctor. That different doctor referred her to a third doctor that she saw in January the following year and resulted in surgery and malpractice claims. So, in addition to the not documenting proper notes that the Department of Health specified, Charlie didn't do, it appears as if he didn't properly care for this patient. Second case. So we've looked at the emergency action and we've looked at the discipline case. The third and final one. So this is another Department of Health administrative complaint against Charlie. And this one states, in pertinent part, on or about June 16th, 2016, patient JM presented to respondent Charlie for extraction of teeth, 16, 17, and 32. So 3 teeth he was getting extracted. Charlie did not obtain a medical history and or the current health condition of the patient prior to the extractions. Charlie acted negligently when he improperly proceeded with the extractions of the patient's teeth, despite his lack of review of the patient's medical history. Prior to extraction, a panoramic radiograph was exposed that showed the anatomy of the teeth to be extracted. It is undetermined whether the panoramic was a current radiograph, and therefore the radiograph was insufficient to determine whether it accurately portrayed the patient's entire current condition. And that makes sense. You want a dentist to know what's currently going on with you health wise and in your mouth before he gets up there and starts doing surgeries. The radiograph supported that the bilateral inferior alveolar nerve, the IAN, overlapped, oh God, these terms, overlapped the apical third of the roots on teeth, numbers 17 and 32, a condition that is not likely to change without surgical intervention. The nerve's position in relation to the teeth's roots indicate a predisposed high probability for neural damage to the IAN. Due to the high probability of nerve injury because of the location of the IAN, the patient's treatment plan required referral to a surgical specialist, such as an oral maxillofacial surgeon, for further evaluation. A dental practitioner can act negligently by undertaking diagnosis and treatment for which the dentist is not qualified by training or experience. Charlie acted negligently when he improperly proceeded with the extractions of the patient's teeth, 17 and or 32, rather than referring the patient to a surgical specialist such as an oral maxillofacial surgeon. On or about March 18th, 2019, so that's 3 years later. Let me see when this originally started. January 16th, 2016. Oh boy, this was dragging on for quite a while. So on or about March 28th, 2019, Charlie's malpractice insurance provider paid an indemnity to the patient on behalf of Charlie for $60,000. So what had happened in the interim since 2016, the patient probably had some issues and either filed suit or made a claim against Charlie. Charlie forwarded that on to his malpractice provider, insurance carrier, and 3 years later, and 3 years later, um, payment was made. An insurance payment was made, and the amount of $60,000. The indemnity was paid as a result of Charlie's dental malpractice for injuring patients' inferior alveolar nerve during the extraction of patients' partially impacted teeth numbers 17 and or 32. So that is another incident of dental malpractice, and that completes our review of Charlie's public complaints, discipline cases, and the emergency suspension. So I find this interesting because I had looked at some Yelp reviews. Of course, they were very old. They were very old, but they weren't all terrible. So I can't vouch for the type of practitioner he was. Obviously, he had his cases where he didn't do what was right, and I'm sure those patients will never forget those incidences. Right? You don't want a physician who's going to mess you up because those things are long lasting and they can impact you for the rest of your life or for years. You know. Um, but some of the reviews that I was looking at said, he may not have been the most personable person, but, he was in and out. There were a lot of patients who appreciated the after hours that he provided. So I don't know. That's what it is for his license. His license is not current. It's not active. It is emergency suspended right now. So no, he cannot be in prison helping his prison inmate friends with their dental emergencies. You may get into some trouble if we find out that that happens. Who knows? But that's the current status, just in case you're wondering, like I was. Um, and that's something important to do. If you're going to a provider, look them up, see what their history is. These records in Florida, anyway, you can look these records up. You can Google, you can go to the Department of Health and see if there are complaints, see if there have been reprimands or discipline cases against a a physician or, a dentist or anybody else who you're putting your trust in to care for you appropriately and care for you, according to guidelines that have been accepted for, appropriate standards of care. You don't want to find out after the fact that, oh crap, I'm going to, a doctor or a dentist that, um, that the Department of Health has been on top of for years because of issues um, in that person's practice, doing the same thing over and over, not properly documenting, not properly, taking the steps that are necessary. They're so necessary that they're set forth, written out in actual laws that need to be followed by these professionals. And they're there for reasons. We may not agree with all the laws out there, but there usually is some rationale behind why they were instituted, why, a bunch of people sat up there and voted for them to be governing our society. So that's just my little 2 cents. I hope you enjoyed this little rabbit hole.
First off, please excuse my mispronunciations of those dental terms. That's not my ministry, and I intend on staying in my lane. With that said, what can be learned here? How about think twice before committing a crime? If you're a professional who's worked for years on end to accomplish something you wanted all your life, because you know that little boy Charlie was looking up to Daddy Harvey all his life saying, I want to be just like Daddy. Something that gave him such bravado. He had so much pride in it. It became his identity. Think twice before committing a crime, because all that could be stripped away from you faster than any of those sports cars you bought with all the money you made. So that's all that I have for you. If you enjoyed this video and any of the information I shared, please hit that like button and tell me in the comments, do you have a dental nightmare story? Some series of events that still annoys you? Pain that's lingering? Leave a recap of it in the comments and we'll commiserate with you, promise. Because I believe we can learn from other people's experiences. We don't have to go through certain situations if we're wise to what could happen. So share your story and let's prevent someone from our growing community from going through the same thing. Oh, and if you think about it, say a prayer for me and my toddler in his first trip to the dentist. Mama's going to need it. All right. Until the next drop, peace.